The movie begins with a girl named Cairo who used to live in an isolated house alone because her parents lived in another country for work. And because of her loneliness, writing became her hobby. Later, the next day, Cairo walks through the jungles and reaches her school class, where we see a middle-aged man named Jonathan who couldn't become a successful writer. That's why he became a teacher. Meanwhile, when Cairo comes into class, Jonathan sees her and asks her to read the books in her syllabus. However, Cairo tells him that she has already read those books. A girl named Vinny comes there. She is also a student in that class, and she is also Cairo's best friend. Cairo and her friend went out to eat something. While Jonathan went through Cairo's books, he found an adult book. And just at that moment, Jonathan's friend Boris came with coffee to the class, and just for fun, he started reading that adult book. Meanwhile, they were shocked to find a book written by Jonathan in Cairo's bag. Later at night, while Jonathan's wife Beatrice was busy with her work, to get her attention, Jonathan starts talking to her and says that one of his students was reading his book. And suddenly, Beatrice receives a call from her work. She picks up and starts talking to her boss. After she is done talking, they both drink together. And when they were getting intimate, just then, Beatrice gets a call again while Jonathan is left unsatisfied. The next day, Jonathan tells Boris about his experience from last night. And then Boris starts making fun of him. After some time, they both see Cairo coming through the forest to her school. She looks beautiful and attractive. She comes closer to Jonathan, and he asks her if she is scared while alone in the forest. And then Cairo tells him she is the scariest thing in those forests and why she would fear herself. When Jonathan hears that, he starts laughing at her. After some time inside the school, Winnie purposely drops her books on the ground in front of Boris. And when Boris sees her books on the ground, he comes to help her, and then Vinny starts flirting with him. She had no idea that Cairo was looking at her when she was talking to Boris. After some time, when Cairo talks to Vinny, she tells her she is crazy because she is trying to flirt with a teacher. Late at night, Winnie comes to Cairo's house while talking. Cairo seems tense because of one of her assignments for school. In the assignment, she has to write an essay on her life's biggest achievement. Suddenly, Winnie says that she should start an affair with her teacher, and then she can write about her story in the assignment. Meanwhile, Cairo says that Jonathan is 20 years older than her. Winnie explains that age doesn't matter and that loving someone older is normal. She also tells her that Jonathan always looks at her in class. Cairo started feeling shy after hearing what Winnie said. Cairo starts feeling a little shy, and her interest in Jonathan increases. Later the next day, Cairo starts staring at Jonathan, after which Jonathan comes closer to her and asks her to see him outside after the class. After class, Jonathan tries to learn a dance step, and then Cairo comes there and starts laughing at him. Meanwhile, Jonathan was so impressed with a chapter written by Cairo that he remembered that whole chapter. After hearing that, Cairo is delighted, and Jonathan wants Cairo to write a short story inspired by her favorite writer. If she completes the task, Jonathan will give her full marks on the exam. And then Cairo immediately agrees to the task, and then she tells Jonathan that she had read all of his books. And she also remembers all her favorite chapters from his books. When Jonathan hears that, he also feels happy about himself. He also invites Cairo to a gathering on the weekend. Later at night, Boris, Jonathan, and his wife Beatrice go for dinner. And there, Winnie works in the restaurant, and she comes to take their order. After seeing her, Beatrice asks Jonathan if she is the same girl he is always talking about. Jonathan says that she is not her. Her name is Cairo. After seeing Jonathan talking about Cairo with so much interest, Beatrice starts getting jealous of her. And to vent her anger, she insults Jonathan in front of Boris. After that, Cairo goes to the special place where Jonathan has invited her to come for a weekend. After some time, when she entered the room, suddenly, Jonathan comes from behind and sits with her. Then, a man begins to recite a poem. In contrast, Jonathan listens to the poem carefully, and Cairo continuously looks at Jonathan. After the poem ends, both of them come out and start smoking cigarettes. The next day, Cairo comes to school, and she meets Jonathan. Cairo had dressed in a very sexy way, and then Boris compliments her and leaves them alone so they can talk privately. Cairo starts talking to Jonathan, and both of them come quite close. Later in the day, Beatrice messages her husband Jonathan, and asks him to go out somewhere. After the class ended, Cairo wanted to tell Jonathan about her favorite writer. While Jonathan was hurrying to go home, he left Cairo alone. After that, Winnie sits at Jonathan's table and starts teasing Cairo. Suddenly, Boris comes to see Jonathan. Winnie again starts flirting with him, and to tease him, she hides his mobile in her dress. Moreover, Cairo needed help finding her mobile. On the other hand, Jonathan's plan to go out with his wife was canceled because Beatrice was busy with her work. That's when Jonathan gets a call from Cairo. Jonathan had mistakenly brought Cairo's mobile in his bag, and now Jonathan and his wife's plan was canceled anyway. That's why he went to Cairo to return her mobile, and when he reached Cairo's house, it started raining. Then Cairo comes out to see Jonathan in a sexy dress. When he sees her, they both fall in love and start kissing each other. After that, Jonathan comes back to his house. And later at night, Jonathan receives an email from Cairo just at that moment. Jonathan's wife tells him she can't focus on her work while he sits there playing with his laptop. That's why Jonathan gets up from there and goes to the storeroom. Moreover, Jonathan printed the story Cairo had just sent him through an email. When he started reading, he discovered it was an adult story. The story is based on a teacher-student relationship similar to that between Jonathan and Cairo. While reading the story, he gets excited and starts thinking about Cairo. The following day, in the class, Jonathan didn't talk to Cairo like he used to before reading her story, and after some time, she asked him why he was behaving differently. Jonathan looks at her and said that he didn't like her essay story, because the story has many adult chapters. After hearing what Jonathan said, Cairo tells him the story is about them, Cairo and Jonathan. He replied that they didn't have any intimacy between them, and their relationship is limited to a student and teacher. Nothing more than that. After hearing that, Cairo's heart broke. Then Jonathan tells her that she has to write the essay again. Otherwise, he will fail her in the exam. After that, Cairo gets very angry, and she says that her story is perfect, and he is just scared because she wrote what he couldn't write. While talking, she looks Jonathan down and says he is an ordinary writer, and that if he has the guts, he should show her and fail her in the exams afterward. Cairo goes home while crying, and she starts drinking with Winnie. On the other hand, Jonathan also gets tense. Seeing him like that, his wife asks him what happened to him. Then Jonathan tells her about the story written by Cairo. After reading the story, she gets excited. She tries to get intimate with her husband after hearing the adult story. However, when they were both about to get intimate, Boris entered the house. On the other hand, Cairo wanted to distract herself, so she told Winnie to text Boris. Then Winnie started teasing him with her text. However, his words had no effect on Boris. After that, Cairo put a plan in place to attract Boris's attention. Both took off their clothes and sent nude photos to Boris after seeing the images. Boris leaves Jonathan's house after seeing the images. After some time, Beatrice gets a call from Jonathan's school. Because over there, everyone started talking about Jonathan and Cairo's relationship. After hearing this, Beatrice is shocked that everything is happening because of a student who wrote an adult story about herself and a teacher. Then she asks Jonathan if anything else has happened between him and Cairo. Jonathan looks at her and says that nothing has happened between them and that they have never been in any relationship. The following day, the school principal called Cairo and Jonathan to her office and asked them what was going on between them. Cairo openly told her everything clearly, that Jonathan had given her exam papers in advance to get good marks. She also said that they had smoked cigarettes together, and they would even meet in private after school. However, when Jonathan was asked about his relationship with Cairo, he couldn't answer the question appropriately. The principal understood that Jonathan was wrong there at that moment. She fired him from his job. After some time, outside the office, Boris tells Jonathan that he should not have crossed the limits and should always behave like a professional. He didn't respect his boundaries, so he is in this situation because of himself. After saying that, Boris left home later. Jonathan told his wife that he had been fired because of the story. When she hears that, she starts doubting that he may have had a relationship with his student. Meanwhile, their fight increased to the point that Jonathan's wife asks him for divorce. On the other hand, Winnie talks to Cairo and tells her what she did to Jonathan was utterly wrong. Meanwhile, Cairo says that she doesn't care about him because he looked down on her and didn't accept her love for him. And now Jonathan will see her real face. While talking, she also says that it was her life's most outstanding achievement. And at the end, Cairo says that Jonathan lost his job and his wife, and his life is completely ruined. Will he ever be able to write anything again? And with that, the movie ends here. Thank you for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe. See you next time. Take care.